Welcome back. Here was the scene in the Montana State House just moments ago as the Republican-controlled State House voted to punish transgender State Representative Zooey Zephyr over comments she made about a bill that would deny gender-affirming care to minors. Zephyr, who is the state's first and only transgender lawmaker, told colleagues last week she hoped when they bowed their heads in prayer, they would, quote, see blood on your hands. Republican leaders in the state legislature responded by demanding she apologize for her comments while denying Zephyr the chance to speak during debate this week. And they also attacked her by misgendering her. In response, some protesters rallied in support of Zephyr. And during the proceedings today, she was allowed to speak right before the House passed a measure to ban her from setting foot on the House floor for the rest of this session, but preserving her ability to vote remotely. Here's Representative Zephyr speaking to her House colleagues last hour.
When I rose up and said, there is blood on your hands, I was not being hyperbolic. I was speaking to the real consequences of the votes that we as legislators take in this body. And when the Speaker asks me to apologize, what he is, on behalf of decorum, what he is really asking me to do is be silent when my community is facing bills that get us killed. He is asking me to be complicit in this legislature's eradication of our community, and I refuse to do so, and I will always refuse to do so.
Montana State Representative Zooey Zephyr joins me now. Representative Zephyr, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Let me start with trying to get some clarification of why you were denied the House, what the punishment is for. Is it for what you said on the House floor last week, or is it for the protest that took place in support of your right to speak?
So when the Speaker denied me the ability to speak, in doing so, he silenced not only me, but the nearly 11,000 Montanans that I represent. And when he continued to deny me the ability to speak, many of those Montanans came to the House to demand that their representative, that an elected representative, be given her voice on the floor. And they took issue with my support of the people coming and protesting in defense of democracy.
Did the Speaker ever ask to meet with you privately? Did you ever have a one-on-one with the Speaker or anything like that, or any phone conversation, anything like that?
There was a brief conversation where the Speaker asked if I would apologize, and I said, as I said on the floor today, right, these bills have real impacts, and I won't apologize for that. To which he said later that evening, I will no longer recognize you on the House floor.
And is there a rule in the House? Does the Speaker have that kind of power, or does he have that kind of power because of the supermajority?
So, and that's where it gets to the real crux of the issue here, is the unequal application of rules of decorum. There have been hearings and there have been moments on the floor where legislators have screamed in their closing, where legislators have insinuated that my very existence as a queer person is somehow sexualizing children. And we object to that, just like the majority leader objected to my comments. And then we move on because we are elected to have the debates that our constituents elected us here to do so.
Do you have any legal recourse?
I'm uncertain of next steps on that front. What I will say right now is that I am focused on my role as a legislator, being ready for bills, making sure that I have what I would want to say on that legislation, right, and that I am ready to vote and work on behalf of the constituents who elected me.
But are you allowed to do much work here? I mean, it feels as if they let you vote remotely, but you're not allowed to. Are you allowed to participate in committee debates remotely?
So this decision is a doubling down of the silencing of 11,000 Montanans. Every time a bill is up on the House floor for the remainder of the session, budget bills, housing bills, etc., there will be 11,000 Montanans, right, whose voices aren't heard in that debate. That said, I will work behind the scenes with my colleagues to make sure that points that I want to make, right, are made on the floor and take votes, etc. That's
why I asked about legal recourse. I think there's some constitutional issues here, equal protection, all of those things that, let alone, one would argue, your First Amendment rights. Have you spoken to a lawyer about this or not?
I'm beginning to look into things on that front, but there are constitutional protections, particularly saying that as legislators, we are granted the same, if not more, First Amendment rights to make sure that we're having the hard conversations that our constituents elected us to have.
I'm curious, are any of these legislators that did vote to ban you, have any of them reached out privately with any regret or anything? Has there been any? Did you have any sort of working relationship with Republicans across the aisle?
I've had working relationships with Republicans across the aisle on an array of issues. And there have been many that over the session expressed that they didn't really like that their party was attacking the trans community so much, but they worried about being primaried or their party leadership squashing their bills. But ultimately, when it came to the votes for those bills, much like the votes today, they found themselves on the wrong side of democracy.
What kind of response do you feel like you're receiving from Montanans outside the legislature? You know, there's such a perception. I can tell you, my political perception of Montana is normally a very libertarian place, a little bit. That's why people like living in Montana, that there's a little bit of live and let live. But that's not what this legislator's actions look like.
Montana does have a live and let live mindset with a history of progressive ideology in that we elected the first woman to Congress. We're one of the birthplace of the union fights and fighting the Copper Kings. And so I've had a ton of messages from constituents, not just LGBTQ people and allies, but conservatives who are saying, I may disagree with you, but what the Republicans, what the far right is doing in this state is fundamentally opposed to the ideals of democracy in our country.
Have you heard from any national Democrats? Have you heard from the White House?
I spoke recently with the lawmakers in Tennessee who were expelled for, again, standing up for the way legislation and policies get communities killed. And so I spoke with them about what it takes to stand up in these moments and how we fight for our country to make sure democracy exists here.
You know, the governor of Utah, one of the reasons he vetoed one of these bills early on, he said he was concerned about the statistics that showed the higher suicide rates among trans teens, particularly if they're made to feel unaccepted, if you will. Have you had any conversations with moderate Republicans? Like you said when you won, you said you were going to work and have some conversations and bring moderate Republicans into this fight. Have you had much success in setting aside today's vote?
Yes, you know, I've had those conversations with moderate Republicans, both the statistics and, as I mentioned on the floor today, real stories of there was a family in Montana whose trans teenager attempted suicide while watching one of the anti-trans hearings. And so I've had those real conversations with moderate Republicans. The struggle right now is when you have a supermajority of Republicans in Montana, particularly far-right Republicans,
right.
What happens is you need 19 votes, and if you only get 7 or 8, these harmful bills still pass.
State Representative Zooey Zephyr, a Democrat from Montana. Appreciate you coming on. I know this has been quite a week, quite a month, but we'll be watching, and you certainly have a place to speak out in a lot of places, so thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.